He's a darling of the beautiful people and also manages to get his work done. Truman Capote.
Oh, God, didn't you ever hear the story? Though he was wicked, he was fun.
Well, he was rather a spectacle. There was nothing ever like him on the American scene.
In those days, there were very few people who were out.
He had a special life and he was going to live in a special way.
He really thought of a way to make the world you live in art.
Won't you join me?
We all think of Audrey Hepburn now, and of course you read the book and it's completely different.
In Cold Blood is what I call the nonfiction novel.
In Cold Blood propels him into a world of achievements.
His intellect made him a complete original.
Truman's going to be read by generations.
For a couple of years, we've been waiting for answered prayers.
I refer to it now as my posthumous novel. Because either I'm going to kill it or it's going to kill me.
Truman saw everything and he remembered it. Sooner or later, he was going to put it down on paper.
He was writing these thinly veiled stories about people he knew, and he basically told all their secrets.
The response was, how could your friend do this to you?
You must have known that there was danger in all of that.
Once you blend fiction and nonfiction, things get a little slippery.
Truman used to always say, don't let the truth get in the way of a good story.
So watch out.
He had this terrible need to be loved. And I don't think Truman ever thought he was loved.
Thank you. Ebs, how are you?
I'm swell. How are you?
Okay, good. Thank you very much. And we're going to talk about the Capote Tapes, which is premiering theatrically in New York and in Los Angeles on the 10th of September. We'll talk about that in a moment. But I've been wanting to talk to you because I need to know a little bit more about your political chapter in these crazy ass times that we're living in. I just kind of want to know how you ended up in the political sphere. I mean, you were, I guess, adjacent in the sense that you were working on campaigns, and then you've been working on campaigns, and then also you were social secretary for the Obamas.
Yep.
Is that right?
Yes.
So can you let's spend like 5 minutes, and then we'll talk all about Truman Capote, who I was always an enormous fan of. That's why I wanted to talk to you until I start reading more about you. And then I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah, I've always been, I grew up in a family that believed in political service and or should I say in service and government service also, and loved politics. And I loved politics from a young age. And
were your parents directly involved in politics too?
No. My mother was politically minded, and I had a lot of family that had been in politics for years and years, and you know, I grew up with it, and I grew up campaigning for friends and family friends, and so it was always in my DNA. And
right. Gotcha.
So when I got to college and loved it and left and worked on a ton of worked on presidential campaigns, and then worked on races in New York City for the mayor and the attorney general and governor of Maryland, you name it. And eventually I ended up I got on in 2008, on the 2008 campaign as Mrs. Obama's political director, and was based out of Chicago, and then went with them to DC, to the White House, and became deputy White House social secretary, and did that, and then have left and went on to do other things. And but I've always kept, and I remain passionate about policy and politics, and so it's in my blood.
It apparently so. I admired that, and as I age, I become more very, more progressive and more engaged myself, as opposed to the other way around, which is the way I always heard it's supposed to be. When you get older, you're supposed to kind of mellow out and chill out, but I don't know. But are you from Tallahassee?
I am from Tallahassee. Yeah.
Okay, so you're from Florida. That's another conversation. Florida is another conversation. We'll have
that conversation. Florida is another conversation.
They need you in Florida, but I'm not recommending or encouraging you to go to Florida. I'm just saying
it's wonderful to visit. I love visiting.
You have family there.
I still have quite a bit of family there. I love visiting, but I'll keep it at that for the moment.
And are you in New York? Because I think I heard you say something that led me to think that you might be in New York.
Yeah, I'm in New York right now. Yeah.
Okay. Now, it just sounds like you had a very, very lively home life growing up, and that your parents were, they were engaged, and they expected probably a lot from their children. And so maybe there were a lot of books around at the side, because I'm trying to figure out, it sounds like you got into Truman Capote, for instance, relatively young, which I did too, but I grew up in New York City. So, like it was part of our, like the lifestyle in the 70s when I was growing up, but Truman Capote was this enormous star, and he was, on Park Avenue, and,
No, I'll tell you, my story is kind of, I don't know that it's that interesting, but my parents were divorced, and I grew up only with my mother, who was a third grade teacher, and I'm an only child. And so she, really, really impressed upon me books and literature, and I can remember going home at 8 or 9, and I would go into my bedroom, and there would be little articles that she had cut out of, whether it be the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal and the Tallahassee Democrat and the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. And there would be a highlighter on my bed. And I had to read the articles before dinner and highlight any words that I didn't know the meaning of. And then I would take a little.
Yeah, and if you didn't do that, you get a demerit.
I would take the little stack of articles. And when I'd get to the dinner table, she would be sitting there, and I would sit next to her. And in between us was a big old-fashioned dictionary. And so we would talk about the article, and then I would sound out the word that I'd highlighted, and we'd look it up in the dictionary. And that was how dinner was. So literature and reading were paramount. And I also had a great librarian who I should reach out to. Actually, I'm going to do that today, because I've been thinking about her, because she actually, I was quite young, and she was the librarian for the high school. And I would go to her library. I preferred to go there and read, and she would push things to me. And I'm pretty sure it was Mrs. Korst who gave me, I want to say it was Miriam, the Capote short story. And then from that, I just kind of, read everything, and obviously being the South, that kind of Southern Gothic literature, that way that he writes, is so reminiscent of, the way we often speak and live down there.
Growing up a son of an educator, it's there. I see the connection now, and but it didn't mean you necessarily had to love reading, but it sounds like you did.
No, I did. Yeah.
Oh, you did?
Fostered a great. I did. I did. I just happened to. I really did. I still love reading. I have a great. I mean, I can read all day.
Yeah, I'm the same way. So I kind of really like these documentaries about literary figures too. I mean, not all. They don't always all make, an entertaining. But can you imagine a documentary about Truman Capote that isn't entertaining?
He had such. He was such an entertainer. He was such a character.
Oh, very much so. And I'm just wondering, you had not. This is your first documentary.
Yeah.
Right. Is it your first film?
First film.
What happened there? Now, how did that happen? I'm going to make a documentary, and then you made the Capote tape, which ended up being this big, huge success at the Toronto TIFF.
Yep.
And then got distribution, and is now on its way to theaters all over the place.
Yeah. You know, it was really, I was reading I was reading a biography of Bill Paley, the founder of CBS, and it was a big tome called In All His Glory. And I got to the end of it and I thought, okay, the two most interesting people in this book are Babe Paley and Truman Capote.
Right. She was one of the swans.
One of the swans, the #1 swan. And from that, I just really, I went back and I reread all of Capote's work. And then I read the biographies and I read a lot about Babe and Slim Key, the swans, as it were. And then I realized that despite two feature films, Infamous and obviously Capote, both of those had really focused on Truman and his writing of In Cold Blood. But I couldn't find anything out there that was really a definitive and comprehensive examination of his life in total and who the man was. And I was really curious. So I just kind of set on my journey.
As I said, this is, the documentary, the Capote Tapes, and the tapes are by and large the product of these George Plimpton interviews that he conducted with Truman. So you're able to use those as one of your primary sources.
Yeah, I mean, those tapes, so George started working on that book, his oral history, not long after Truman died. And he spent about 10 years working on it. And I had that book, was one of my great resources. And I was introduced to George's widow, Sarah, who is an extraordinary woman. And through that, at some point we were talking, she said, I think I have some of George's tapes where he did these interviews, where he interviewed people. I said, that would be cool. And so she was so generous and unearthed these tapes that, had been in boxes and crates, like in the attic or wherever. And, we got them digitized and transcribed, and, it was tons of hours upon hours of tape, and started really listening and going through. And, I was already in the process of making the film. So the tapes became this gold dust that she.
Oh my gosh. So you're saying is you already had started the film and then you found the tapes?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
You must have felt Deus Ex Machina or something. Very, very incredible opportunity for you.
It was a great.
Did you feel like the big thing for a lot of us that know Truman Capote and the history of Truman Capote, and it's there in your film, but is, he just had this huge, this trajectory, unlike almost any other author of his, certainly of his generation, where, he just, as you already mentioned, he wrote Other Voices, Other Rooms, then he wrote In Cold Blood, then he wrote Breakfast at Tiffany's, right? And then he wrote In Cold Blood, or do I have the order right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I mean, one huge success after another, and then all of a sudden it ends. Mm-hmm. So he's now he's a celebrity, and world famous, and he hits a wall in a sense. And I'm just, what do you feel in your research, and because it sounds like you did a lot of research, that you kind of figured out, well, what is it that broke, or what is it that, because he did write this chapter for
Answered Prayers.
Answered Prayers, which was the book he swore he was writing and finishing, but we kind of figure out probably he wasn't. He did write a chapter, of course, that was this very explosive thing where he sabotaged his relationship with the swans, right? But did you get any closer to figuring out his mind?
Yeah, I think the wall that he hit was, one, getting caught up in other people's lives. And I don't mean that in a gossipy sense. I mean, though that's true as well, but I mean,
it's there.
It's definitely there.
Yeah.
But I mean it more in the sense of he got caught up in, living a lifestyle of the rich and famous and being on so-and-so's boat and holidaying with so-and-so. I mean, I think there was so much of, and being, skiing in Switzerland and doing this, and not that those things are bad, but I think for him, they became kind of like a permanent vacation. Now, what I will say is he was consistently, he did write, and when he was writing, he was very structured about writing. But I think between the vacationing and the drugs and alcohol, which I think were really,
there's that.
Drugs and alcohol were really the thing that, even if he wrote through it, you can sense that the writing's just not as crisp. It's not as strong. It's not,
maybe not up to his own standards.
Yeah, precisely. And so I'm a believer, I think I do think he was writing answered prayers. I think, I don't know if he finished it. I'm not sure if he, burned it or hid pieces of it. But I definitely think he knew that it wasn't up to his standards, and he was a perfectionist. And he had spent his entire career, answered prayers, that scandalous bit where, he's telling all of these secrets of his friends of 20 years. That in many ways was a lot of what Truman's writing was all about. I mean, Breakfast at Tiffany is not a walk in the park a book. Like, the Audrey Hepburn character in the film is, it all works out. In the book, it's a lot grittier. But it was
also the George Plimpton.
And so also the George Plimpton part, exactly.
Neither one was reflective of the characters in the book, really.
No, and yet you had so many people after that book, so many socialites saying, well, and especially after the film, saying, oh, Holly Golightly was based on me. And it's because that writing is so, and Norman Mailer from his own lips says it in the film, he wrote the best sentences. That writing was so beautiful and so crisp and so intriguing that, you can't fault, you want to be a part of that, even if it's not glowing.
Mm-hmm. Do you don't think maybe it's too romantic to say that after writing In Cold Blood, that something may have also, maybe he just had been injured, psychically speaking?
No question. Definitely. He definitely had a breakdown after writing In Cold Blood, and that's what I mean. And when I say vacation, I mean, look, he needed to recover, and his friends, these same friends he would later write about, they took him in and really nursed him. But it then just kind of went on and on and on and on and on, and kind of lingered into the ultimate vacation experience.
Well, right, and with the alcohol and everything else, and I could see it. And then he's a professional celebrity, right?
And Studio 54, and it becomes a party life.
Wasn't a great decade to be liberated, maybe, for an author who needs to be hunkering down and working.
Exactly.
It's a party year. The 70s were kind of the party years,
Totally.
Yeah. Okay. Once again, Ebs, and it's Burnough.
Yes, perfect.
Burnough is the director of the Capote Tapes. It's coming into New York. It's going to be at the Quad. I guess Greenwich, who your distributor has a relationship with them. What a great theater. And then, I grew up going there. And then in Los Angeles at the Laemmle Monica, Encino, and Pasadena. So, and then on the 17th of September, it's going to go real wide to cities all over. And then later in October, it'll be available in your living room. Or
on demand.
It sounds like on demand. Yes. So anyway, I'm so glad for the opportunity to talk to you about it. Is there, as we wind down, is there a point where you feel like you have a relationship with Truman Capote?
Yes. What a good question. Yes. But like, yeah, I guess that's true. Yes, there's a point at which I do feel like I have a relationship with Truman Capote. I don't know that relationship is always one of, he's not a person I want to hang out with all the time. But he is a person that I have a relationship with, and I have become oddly, which I never thought when I was beginning this film, I've become oddly protective of. Because I think I think for all of the way that the world remembers him, for the talk shows, for the witty remarks, for the often kind of callous or quick-witted, nasty cut downs that he was known for, I think what I learned about him was also that this was a person who, at his core, really just wanted to be loved, and was a gay man in an era when that was A, in many ways illegal, and B,
right,
he was
mental illness.
He was he was open about who he was. And so he, for me, the thing that changed that informed, not changed, but further informed my thinking about him was when I met Kate Harington, who of course is the daughter of one of his lovers who he adopts when she's 13. And I thought to myself, and I love Kate, and I was just with her recently, actually.
That's great.
And it's an amazing thing, because it's like anyone, you realize that this was a person who could not, the life that I live today, I have a 16-month-old and I have 3 older children. The life that I lead as an openly gay man, I can take for granted. I can say, oh my gosh, we have a family. I can look at my husband and say, we have a family, and how exciting. And that wasn't something that was just, it wasn't just easy like that for him. And so I think I've become more protective of him in the sense that we're all very layered and complex people, but hopefully our goal, and this is why I believe in politics and why I've worked in it and worked in government, our goal is that for the next generation, we've done something to make life a little better, to make things a little easier, to make things more equitable. And so I think my relationship with him has become such that I think we've overlooked him and his courageousness for being who he was when he was that person. And I'd like to see that remembered a little bit more than I think it has been.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
It was great meeting you, and I hope we can do, another one of these sooner than later. I don't know if you've got more, maybe now that you're a big documentary filmmaker, successful.
Oh yeah. I'm back whenever. You call, I'm there.
All right.
It's great to meet you.
That. And you too. And good luck with, I don't know if your kids are school age, but I know that
I've got our youngest is 16 months, so thank goodness we haven't been in the.
Been a little while for that.
We haven't been in the crunch. Then the olders are the olders are much older. So
okay. Well, it was really great meeting you. I've been wanting to talk to you about the documentary. It's called the Capote Tapes, and I'm excited to encourage people to see it.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right.
All right.
Take care.
Bye.